We have come to the final movie of the sequel trilogy. Came out 3 years ago, and that is Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. And man, yeah, so with The Last Jedi, I did previous videos on Force Awakens and Last Jedi, reminiscing on 7, 5, and now 3 years. We discussed how that movie split the fandom in half. And so what Disney did was they brought back J.J. Abrams, and he teamed up with Chris Terrio, the guy who wrote Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, one of the messiest movies ever written. No matter if you like it or not, it's a messy-ass movie, including the extended cut. It's just a messy plot, to come in and write The Rise of Skywalker and close out the sequel trilogy. Now, originally, Colin Trevorrow was supposed to do the movie, and there is a script that came out called Duel of the Fates, and this script was absolutely fantastic. He managed to tie in things from Last Jedi and Force Awakens to where they made sense. He managed to also bring up things from the prequel and the original trilogy, and it really did feel like the end of the Skywalker Saga. It really felt like a real ending. The Rise of Skywalker, though, my God, what a complete and absolute shit show. I've talked about this movie a lot, and it's interesting because what they chose to do with this movie is, rather than try to build off of what Rian Johnson did to kind of course correct it and make it so that it makes sense and continue the story of Kylo Ren's rise to power, instead they chose to basically reverse everything The Last Jedi did. And it's interesting because there have been inside leaks and insiders who have talked about how J.J. Abrams hated The Last Jedi. He'll never publicly say it, but he hated where Rian Johnson took the story. And in many ways, like I said in the Last Jedi video, The Last Jedi has a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems in that film besides just the writing of Luke Skywalker. Rise of Skywalker, though, when it comes to actual writing of an individual film, is so freaking sloppy. I mean, we've talked about it to death. It feels like two movies crammed into one. Things happen that don't get well explained. There are so many logic holes and so many issues with the film, like so many little problems that add up to big ones. The pacing is an absolute mess. They introduce characters that don't matter. They don't get us to care, and it wound up being episode 9. Like, when I was a kid and I pictured Star Wars episode 9, I thought it was going to be this incredibly epic battle, a space battle like no other, a ground battle, Jedi doing crazy stuff, you know what I mean? Like some old Republic shit. And instead what we got was a fight on pieces of the Death Star, which already is controversial. That was a okay lightsaber duel, but definitely not as good as the one from Force Awakens, and nowhere near as good as the ones from the prequels. And some really strange things. So I remember going to Kamehacon 2, and that was the same weekend as Star Wars Celebration Chicago. And that's when they showed the first trailer and officially announced the name of episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. So, two things that people took from this, not just me. The Emperor Palpatine is back somehow, which already causes a lot of problems. A lot of Star Wars fans hate this decision, yo. They hate it. And I'll go into why in a minute. But that's one thing. And the other thing is that when you hear The Rise of Skywalker, the first thing you think of is, oh, well, they're going to bring Luke back to life. They're really going to reverse Last Jedi. And that's not what happened. We find out by the end of the movie that the Skywalker they're referring to is Rey. So this movie tries to push this narrative of, it doesn't matter what your bloodline's composed of. It doesn't matter what you come from. You can overcome your past. You can overcome who you believe you're destined to be, because you always have a choice in the matter, right? You always have a choice. But that was so poorly executed in this film that it's ridiculous. The best thing about this movie, I'm going to say a couple of good things, is the acting is great. The scenes with Finn, Rey, and Poe in the first act are fun. They have chemistry. And as usual, Adam Driver's awesome. And as usual, Ian McDiarmid as the Emperor is awesome. He's a great performer. That's kind of it. I mean, there are individual scenes in this movie that I love. There are like specific scenes you can take out of the film that I thought were fantastic. It's just, this is one of those movies where you've got well shot scenes because J.J. Abrams knows how to work that camera. You've got well shot scenes, well executed scenes, but when you put it together into a movie, it doesn't work. And that's why people always say movies are made in the editing room. Because even if you have like 100 amazing scenes, if you edit them together incorrectly, the movie will suck as a whole. And this is an example of that. And that's only one problem. Bringing Palpatine back was such a cowardly move. They knew that Snoke was dead, and they had kind of run out of nostalgia to milk from. So they bring in Lando, which I was expecting. Then they bring back Palpatine as the main villain. And he dies in the lamest possible way. Like, didn't anybody tell Abrams and Trevorrow this is lame? Like, dude, this is lame. What are you doing? This is lame. And they still did it. My God. They try to take Rey's Mary Sue-ness down a bit, but it winds up not working because ultimately we still don't care about the characters. The scene with Luke Skywalker's ghost where he basically says, you know, I was wrong, and the Jedi weapon, like reversing Last Jedi. The movie was so desperate to apologize for Last Jedi that it focused more on apologizing for Last Jedi than it did telling a good story. That's really what the problem was. Shit just happens. They try to raise the stakes, but there's so many plot holes. Like, you know, the Emperor has a secret militia, gigantic army of Star Destroyers, more than even the Empire had. And he lifts them out of the ground with the Force. And then we find out that each one has like a whole crew on it, which means that there are literally millions of people on Exegol. Like, just stupid shit like that where it's like, okay, this is dumb. They all have Death Star tech, so Abrams trying to raise the stakes again with the damn Death Star tech. Like, can we have something different, like a different kind of super weapon, or just not even have one at all? It just feels like they are creatively bankrupt, and this is something that Red Letter Media said a lot about Star Wars. That Star Wars is creatively bankrupt, and they're right, because it's like the same thing. Now Andor comes along and gives us like a political thriller that everybody seems to love, but it's still, I don't like it. I thought it was boring, and maybe I'll go back and watch it again and actually finish it. But, you know, the movie became so concerned with pleasing fans that it just had no story. It became, and this has been talked about to death, fetch quests over and over again that don't make any sense. No real plot development at all. Characters like Poe Dameron becomes the leader of the Resistance or the Rebellion or whatever they're called because Princess Leia dies in the movie. And that's something else too. Those Leia scenes that they took from Force Awakens and Last Jedi and re-edited, they're very awkward scenes, man. Like, they did a good job, I think, honest to God, but it's very distracting knowing that she's not really talking to them. So it kind of comes off like that early 2000s CG where the actors are talking to nobody. You know what I mean? Like that Attack of the Clones CG stuff. And it's difficult to pull that off. And it just, because we knew she was dead. Like, we have this in the back of your head, right? You subconsciously are thinking Carrie Fisher is dead. She's not really in that scene. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I understand Abrams loved Carrie Fisher. They all did. And respect to him for putting her in top billing. I do respect that. But it's kind of funny that she's the top billed person in this film, but she's not even really in it. She never shot any scenes for this movie. These are for other movies. So it's very weird. But like I said, the movie has like a paper-thin plot. The Emperor comes back out of nowhere. It's very poorly explained. And now we're in this weird state where Star Wars has tried to explain this now. With the visual dictionary and with the comics. They always do this. This is a major problem with Disney Star Wars. Is they put something out, a movie, a TV show, and then they say, well, if you want to get full context, you have to read a book or a comic. Fuck you. Fuck you. I'm tired of that shit. I don't want to have to go out and buy another book or another comic to get the whole story. If I want to buy a book or a comic that goes into like another story or helps me understand a character more, that's one thing. But if you have to buy a book to make the movie better, like that Rogue One Catalyst novel, if you have to do that, that's poor and lazy filmmaking. And it's also Disney milking this Star Wars to get their money back. One thing I found out, a few months ago, which I should have known, but I found it out, is that Bob Iger rushed these movies into production. And you can tell this movie was rushed. You can tell they rushed it. There's no real thought put into this film. There really isn't, because there are so many logic holes and so many things that are contradictory even within the film itself, not even just to the rest of the saga. It's so disrespectful. Like, I sit here and I think, what is worse for Star Wars? Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker? And it's very hard to pick. This movie completely shat on the prophecy with Anakin Skywalker and the end of the Sith. Ruined, in my opinion, the end of Return of the Jedi. I know some folks don't agree, and that's fine. You can think what you want. It ruins the end of that film. It takes away from some of the good stuff from Last Jedi. It ruins the Snoke mystery completely, even though Last Jedi kind of did that first, and other things. And so what they've been trying to do lately is they've been trying to explain, like, okay, well, Exegol was the Emperor's backup plan. It was there the whole time. They're doing this thing where they're trying to like backtrack now and have it fit into the canon, but it reeks of desperation. And this has been the issue with Disney Star Wars from the very beginning. It's so freaking desperate. Even from the decision to use the original trilogy aesthetics versus the prequel aesthetics, I understand why they did that in Force Awakens. I understand why that movie was a soft reboot. I get it. But, my God, even that was a corporate decision. And there's a much deeper topic here, and that is about when corporations run a franchise and the creator is out, how things like this can happen. And I want you to think about this for a minute. Disney Star Wars is the biggest flop as a whole possibly ever, because they took the biggest film franchise of all time prior to Marvel, the biggest movie franchise ever, and they ran it into the ground because they had no plan. They didn't think things through. And it's too bad because, like I said before, Force Awakens really did set up a decent foundation. If episodes 8 and 9 were great, they would have made episode 7 better. It would have been a trilogy. But Bob Iger rushed these without even sitting back and giving them time to come up with something. And so when this movie was announced, they didn't postpone it. I mean, I remember they postponed... Well, actually, no, they did postpone this one by 6 months or 8 months. It was supposed to come out in May of 2019. It got moved to December because Avengers was coming out right before they want to compete with themselves. Endgame was a huge movie. And how you do the end of a saga right. This was not. I mean, this was a big movie financially, but it didn't end the saga right. So they didn't get enough time to really tell a decent story. The Knights of Ren were completely wasted. Things that were set up in Force Awakens were thrown out. The storyline with Rey and her being the daughter of a Palpatine clone is ridiculous, and it's not even explained in the movie. The movie does a very poor job of explaining how the Emperor's alive. You have to go to the books and the comics to find that out. Fuck you, Disney. I hate when they do this. And the thing about this movie, and I'm going to go back to memories about it, is I remember in 2019 there were a couple of leaks that came out on 4chan, I think it was, or maybe it was Reddit. And one of them was earlier in the summer, and I loved the idea behind it. Basically what it was is that the Emperor's spirit was trapped inside of an artifact, like a holocron, and that's how he comes back, like his soul. And that's actually a much better idea than him actually physically being alive. And it becomes this sort of race to bring him back. There's a big fight at the end with Jedi, and it sounded awesome. I actually love that idea. And that wound up being a fake leak. It was fan fiction. Then in the summer, this guy named Jedi Paxis, that's right, his name is Jedi Paxis, who leaked this, not Doomcock. So many of Doomcock's fans have been like, oh, well, he leaked The Rise of Skywalker, and he was right. No, he didn't. He stole it from Jedi Paxis. That's the real leaker. And so Jedi Paxis leaks this spoiler, or this plot of the whole movie. And I remember covering it on the channel. Some of you guys do. I remember covering it here on the channel. And I said, like, there's no way this is real. With the dagger and Ochi, and I was like, there's just no way. This sounds like bad fan fiction. Kylo Ren working for Palpatine. I was like, that goes against what he established in Last Jedi. Like, there's so many things that are wrong with this. It has to be bad fan fiction. Then the trailer comes out in, like, what, October, I think it was? And you see Rey with the dagger. And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God in heaven. The spoilers were true. That's when it hit me. And then when I went to go see the movie, it was the opposite experience from Last Jedi. And I'll explain what I mean by that. When I went to go see Force Awakens, I was hyped. When I went to go see Last Jedi, I was super hyped because, you know, people came out and said, oh, it's this great movie, you know, the shills. With this one, I already knew the plot going in. I went to go see it with a weird feeling in the pit of my stomach because I somehow, and this is weird, okay? Try to follow me on this one. I knew what was going to happen, but I was somehow hoping that it didn't. It's almost like I was in denial. You know what I mean? And I know that Ryan from RK Outpost did a video with me on this channel, and we discussed how I was basically, what's the word he used? I was grieving Star Wars. I was grieving the death of Star Wars. And as I'm watching the film, like, I'm trying to enjoy some of the scenes. I'm enjoying the acting. I'm enjoying Kylo Ren getting his mask back, and Rey, and real shit, like the lightsaber duel in the middle of the movie where she's on the ship and he's on the ground. I like that lightsaber duel. How the camera pans around them and it changes the background. That was good, great filmmaking. Like, that's my favorite technical achievement of this movie was that. I thought it was great. Again, doesn't make the movie good, but that sequence is phenomenal. So I'm watching this movie and I have this feeling in the pit of my stomach, dude, where I'm just like, oh my God, like this is the sequel trilogy. This is what we got. Force Awakens, I walked out of it mesmerized. I was frozen by its greatness. Even though it wasn't that great, it's okay because it tickled all of my bones properly. I'm not trying to be sexual, but it did. Last Jedi, I walked out of it pissed. This one, I walked out of it sad. I was very sad. Because they're going to consider this part of the Skywalker Saga, and it's just not. The Skywalker Saga is episodes 1 through 6. That's the Skywalker Saga. That's what it really is. These movies with Rey and the Palpatine and all that mess. And then, like, you know, at the end of the movie when Kylo Ren and Rey kiss, there were girls in the movie theater, and as they're about to kiss, you hear them go, no, no. And then when they kissed, they were like, no. I thought that was so funny. I thought it was so damn funny, yo. I remember another problem I had when I saw this movie is I sat about 3 chairs away from this, like, kid in a wheelchair. He was, like, handicapped. And the damn kid wouldn't stop fucking talking. Every scene he's talking, and I'm just, like, really annoyed. But I don't want to say anything because he's obviously handicapped. You know, and I don't want to be a dick and, like, be mean to a handicapped kid or tell him to shush. But oh, I should have just told him, please be quiet, like, kindly. But, oh, dude, he almost ruined. I mean, the movie was already ruined, but he almost really ruined it. The end of this movie, when she buries the lightsabers, calls herself Rey Palpatine, she lights her lightsaber for no reason. She just lights it, looks at it, puts it away. Why would you light your lightsaber? Oh, I know why, because the audience has to see it. I hate when movies do this. It's so, like, it's such bad filmmaking to, like, tell the audience, like, hey, look, she has her own lightsaber. We'll even light it so you can make sure it's a lightsaber. There's no reason for her to do this in the scene, but she'll do it. Dumb. And if you thought the subversions in Last Jedi were bad, this is the one where it's like, oh, Chewie's dead. 5 minutes later, no, he's not really dead. Oh, 3PO lost his memory. No, he's okay. Oh, Kylo's turning good. No, he's not. Oh, yes, he is. Oh, what a mess, dude. And so, the end of the movie when she lights the lightsaber and walks out into the binary sunset, it's so damn depressing. For me, it was very depressing. Because I'm over here thinking about what could have been. Even if they didn't do what they did in Force Awakens, even if they did something totally like really unique and different, maybe set it later on without the original trilogy characters or something like that, I still was like, dude, I was like, what? This is the sequel trilogy. I thought the sequel trilogy had the potential when this thing first started to be as good, if not close, to the original trilogy, which is a stupid thing to think, bro. Oh, God. But everything seemed to be, Disney. It's Disney. Disney, like them or not, has provided lots of entertainment for us as kids. You can't deny that Disney has made a lot of good movies. You can't deny the MCU, owned by Disney, has been successful. Maybe not Phase 4, but Phase 3 was absolutely a monster. Kind of spoiled us, to be honest with you. But with this, I'm just like floored. People blame Kathleen Kennedy. She's responsible, I'm sure, but Rian Johnson is, Abrams is, Terrio is, and Bob Iger sure as fuck is. Carrie Fisher's dead. They can't redo this even if they wanted to. They can't just go back and fix it. That's why those fake, made up, listen to what I'm telling you, fake, made up stories about the sequel trilogy being erased from canon, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It hasn't happened. It's not going to happen. We are stuck with this. This is the canon of Star Wars according to Disney. And even though The Mandalorian is good, even though we have a decent Obi-Wan show and we have, some good things coming out with the animation studios, Star Wars, Tales of the Jedi, stuff like that, that's quality. Even though we have that, they're never going to be able to fix this. Like, that's the depressing part, yo. This is it. This is the sequel trilogy. They are never going to be able to reverse the damage. The damage is done. That's it. All we can do is move on and just say, damn, that really sucked. It reminds me of the Matrix sequels, which I've kind of come around on. I don't hate them like I used to, but there was a time when I hated them because I thought they hurt the first film. And they still do. The first film was so perfect. Sequels were not so good at all and kind of hurt what the message was of the first movie. Right? And for a while, I hated them because of that reason. I don't think I'm ever going to come around on these movies because they're poorly made movies. Last Jedi is a time waster, and this movie is such an adrenaline rush that it doesn't even feel like a movie. It's a theme park ride, like what Martin Scorsese said, but not a very fun one. It's a theme park ride where it continues to jolt you, and it's not a pleasant movie to watch. Yeah, it looks nice. Like I said before, like Last Jedi, visually it's great, I'm sure. The way that they did Exegol, where it's like this sort of black rock kind of with the lightning and everything, was beautiful. That was gorgeous how they did that. That's my favorite. Exegol is like my favorite aesthetic in the sequel trilogy because it's great. Like if you're going to have the Emperor hiding on a secret planet, it's going to look like that. With lightning storms and, secret underground caverns that have like Sith statues. That's good shit. That's the shit I like. There was good things in this movie. But the bad outweighs the good. I mean, just the fact that the Emperor announces return on Fortnite, there's just, what a mess, yo. And this proves that Chris Terrio can't write worth a shit and that Abrams is only good at making movies that he starts chapter 1, but he can't write the rest of it. And it also, lessons can be learned from this. No matter how much money you have to plan things out. They shouldn't have rushed these movies. I get it. You want to make your money back, the $4 billion. Give it time. You would have made more had the story actually been better. If episode 7, 8, and 9 built onto each other properly, by the time we got to episode 9, that movie could have made $2 billion. I mean, with No Way Home and Avengers Endgame doing it, why couldn't Star Wars? I think it could have, genuinely. But I think they ruined it so badly with episode 7 and really episode 8 that nobody cared. It still made $1 billion, but it wasn't like it was a film that people went back to go see. You know, it's very poorly edited. It's poorly written. It's just a bad movie. And the only thing to like about it is the Star Wars feel. The Emperor, lightning, ships, TIE fighters. You know, the things that everybody, oh, look, it's a walker, it's a Jedi, it's a lightsaber. Like, but when you watch the movie, there are just so many plot holes and things that make no sense. You know, watch Mahler's video on it. Mahler did a great, like, it was like 2 hours or something like that, breakdown of the movie. It's long, but there are so many problems. I think Jenny Nicholson also did it. I didn't agree with her opinion on Last Jedi, but she nailed a lot of things that didn't make any sense about this movie. This movie was so unthought out. They just were so scared of getting backlash, they wound up getting more backlash. So, to me, there's 3. I'm going to keep it simple, y'all. And I know some of y'all like the prequels. I love Revenge of the Sith. I love it. Not so much the first 2, but that one I really love. But to me, there's only 3 Star Wars movies. Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. Everything else is DLC. Everything else is extra. The prequels, I can buy them. I'll put them in there, you know. I'm not going to fight against that. But the sequels, dude, them shitting on the prophecy and all the Jedi at the end, you know, her copying the Tony Stark thing, and I'm all the Jedi. All right, bro, we get it. Dramatic writing. We saw it already earlier in the year. Rise of Skywalker is a complete shit show of a movie and did more damage to Disney Star Wars than anybody could have ever expected. Some like it more than Last Jedi. There are scenes in this movie and a certain tone that does feel more like Force Awakens and does feel less dreary and less depressing than Last Jedi. But then there's stuff that's more depressing, like the end, for example. Kylo Ren and Carrie, Princess Leia, you know, her death, you know, was, I guess, okay, but they had to kind of do it. But it was just, you know, it was so rushed. We didn't even get enough time with Ben Solo. Oh, but don't worry, they'll make a comic and you'll get more time with him then. Yeah, fuck you. The Rise of Skywalker is a mess, yo. And this concludes my retrospective. It's been years, and the unfortunate thing is I'm still sad. I am still kind of bummed out that this is the sequel trilogy. I really am. I'm bummed about it. It's a bummer. It's something that had so much potential to be amazing and was flubbed and was corporate, and everything felt like a boardroom decision, not a creative writer expressing his artistry. It was a complete shit show. And I think historically, we're going to remember the sequel trilogy as being the biggest blunder in the history of box office cinema. Because Disney had the biggest franchise ever. And they own the other one, which is Marvel. The biggest film franchise of all time, Star Wars, as far as money and popularity, toys, and all that shit. And they blew it. And they made people stop being Star Wars fans. Or at least fans of the new stuff. It hurt their audience. They hurt their audience. And then fighting with nerds online wasn't going to help you either. And these things have not changed. I don't know if I'm ever going to like these movies. I don't know if I tried, dude. I tried. It's been sometimes over time I can appreciate things more, you know, but there's just too many problems, especially with this one. Those are my thoughts. I'll talk to you soon.